A lot of people don't realize that because the Omni Diet is really the nutrition program of the Amen clinics. It is the program we use in all 6 of our clinics. So a lot of people think that I wrote it just for that reason, but that's not why. I was really on a decade-long crusade to try to heal myself. It was, probably actually more like 20 years of really trying to figure out why my own health was failing. I spent more than the first half of my life chronically ill. So from the time I was about 4 years old that I can remember, I was in and out of doctor's offices. I had upper and lower GIs, severe GI issues, and multiple surgeries, and I was what in the medical field we call a frequent flyer, meaning that I was just constantly in hospitals and doctor's offices, and so I like to say I earned my miles the hard way. And so, even though I often didn't look sick on the outside because I worked out really hard trying to counterbalance it, I was actually probably doing more damage that way. Thinking I could eat what I wanted because I worked out so hard. And that was worse. Eating what you want and working out really hard is not a solution. And so fitness and health are not synonymous. And it all just came crashing down. And at 23, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. It came back 3 times. It metastasized and came back 3 times. It was like a sweater unraveling. So then it was like multi-system failure. And it was not a lot of fun. So at one point I was on 9 prescriptions. I was given 9 prescriptions, and as someone in that health field, I actually wanted to be a doctor, but I had to drop out of college 3 times, going through this health crisis, and I had severe depression. So I just was so frustrated, and I went to the doctor, and when I complained about the 9 prescriptions and said there had to be a better way, he told me that it was genetic, that I was in denial, and that maybe I should see a psychiatrist. Now, I don't know how many of you know my husband or who he is, but at this point I was, finally with my husband, and I'm sitting there scratching my head going, okay, this whole thing is backwards. Something's not right here. And I was just very frustrated. So that's when I really jumped into the deep end of trying to learn about what connection food and lifestyle has on our health and on really making a difference long term. What control do we have? And guess what? It turns out that we have a lot more than I ever thought. So this whole area of epigenetics and nutrigenomics, which are just really big words, but they are very simple when you break it down. It tells us that the food we eat and the lifestyle choices that we make every day turn on and turn off genes. They're either health-promoting genes or they're disease-causing genes. And I was so excited to hear that because I have diabetes, cancer, dementia, and heart disease on both sides of my family. So, according to my doctors, I should just accept that, take another pill. But this research I was doing told me that I had hope. And I was just so excited to hear that. I couldn't get pregnant, like some of you were talking about. I had all of these other issues, and now I found out, oh, guess what? I have so much more control than I ever thought. So as I did this research and I wrote this book, this gives our patients a lot of hope as well at our clinics. But for some people, and this is the message that I want to put out there, and it's not to scare people, but it is to help create just a little bit of the right kind of anxiety to motivate people. For some people, the way you're living your lives, not you guys, because you guys are in the right place, but for some people, it's literally suicide. Because genetics load the gun. But the way people live their lives today, that's what pulls the trigger. And that's why I love partnering with people like Dr.Tammy, because she is out there spreading this message, and there's just, there's not enough of us out there trying to really show people, look, how you live your life. You don't have to just keep adding to that laundry list of medications. I'm not anti-medication, not at all. I'm grateful for the medications I will take for the rest of my life. But I don't want to take them just indiscriminately when I can make some simple lifestyle changes. And that's exciting. So now my husband and I, he's my best friend, and we're partners in this, and it's awesome. We're just having so much fun spreading our message and living our mission and having a great time. We just filmed our second PBS show together. It's coming out in a couple months called Healing ADD, so I just finished another cookbook, Healing ADD with Food. So we're having a blast.
And how did your husband get into the whole brain thing? What motivated him to really be a pioneer in that?
Oh gosh, that's sort of an odd story. Believe it or not, he was married when he was very young. He was in the Army. He wanted to be a pediatrician, and I'm actually very dear friends with his first wife. So it's an interesting story now. I mean, I know her now. I didn't know her then. But she struggled a lot, and she struggled with depression as well. And through that process of trying to help her, you know, when he realized that when you help someone change how they feel, change their life, you not only affect that person, but generations to come. Because if she got well, then she's going to be a better mother. She's going to be, then their kids are going to be better. Then the next generation is better. And that just affected him. He decided he wanted to go into that field instead. And then he discovered that psychiatry was broken. So when he realized that, he just had this mission to fix it and change it and help it to be a better field.
And I think that's so much about medicine altogether. It's broken. It's just broken.
Right. Yeah. So, and there's just, it's exciting though, because there's so much room to grow.
Absolutely.
So I love it. Mm-hmm. It's fun.
So the slides that you showed in Las Vegas were amazing. Get a little feedback.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Let's see if that works a little bit better. So the slides you showed in Las Vegas were very impactful to me, and I thought maybe whatever feels good to you, if you want to tell a little bit more about
Sure.
you know, some patients or stories, but I thought that, I really took that away. I mean, I still see those images in my head, and I think that as far as sugar and the way we look at sugar, it completely changed that for me.
Yeah, so I work a lot with large groups. So some of the work that I do is with a group, Salvation Army, and we do a lot of groups actually with a lot of drug rehabilitation centers. And what's amazing to me is that these drug rehabilitation centers, so the organizations that need to eat the healthiest, places like hospitals, prisons, schools, homeless shelters, and nursing homes. Think about the places that really need to feed the people the healthiest, is often where they're feeding them the worst. Now we know that food is medicine or food is poison. It's a fact. We know this. Food is actually more addictive than cocaine and morphine. We have several studies now that show that, because it works on an area in the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is, if you think of it like the pleasure button. Only guess what? Sugar turns on more cells in the nucleus accumbens than does cocaine or morphine. So when you think of it from that perspective, when you're giving people in drug rehabilitation centers junk food to placate them, to make them comforted, it's psychotic. It's crazy to be doing that, because you're turning on those cells, keeping them addicted, keeping that alive, rather than breaking that addiction, because they make worse decisions. They can't make proper decisions when you do that. So they need to be able to make really clear decisions. So I do a lot of work with Salvation Army, and the results have been just absolutely stunning. And some of the stories we have from the group there, since they implemented this program, are unbelievable. In fact, well, I won't go too much into that, but some of the things we're doing with them now are so much fun. Taking them grocery shopping, teaching them how to do this on like just a rock bottom budget. And so it's just been amazing. But one of the people that I work with there, Tammy is her name, she was truly addicted to donuts. And she told me she just couldn't imagine her life without them. But Tammy was also diabetic, and her blood sugar was never under 160 with her medication. So this was a real issue, and she knew intellectually that what we were teaching her was right, but she just couldn't internalize it. So we realized at our clinics, we're a psychiatric clinic, and we know that we have to reach into your limbic brain, which means your emotional brain. We can lecture to you all day long. It doesn't help you. So I realized that I needed to get into Tammy's emotional part of her brain and really help her to identify with what these donuts were doing to her. This was emotional for her. So what I did is I created a slideshow for her to show her. Now this is personal to me, and I want you to understand why it's so personal to me. My grandmother had diabetes, and as sick as I was, my grandmother grew up with me, not because she was taking care of me. I grew up very poor. My mother worked 3 jobs. She was a single mother. And it was survival for us. I had to take care of her. And 11 years old, I had to give her insulin shots because she could no longer see. Diabetes makes you go blind quite often. She had neuropathy. So this is very personal. So as I show you these slides, maybe it'll help you understand why this meant so much to me. So I'm going to see if I can pull this up and go through this. I had the slideshow ready for Tammy. She was completely addicted. Tell me if you can see this, because I'm going to stop being able to see you.
Okay.
Okay, and maybe while that's loading, I know one of the things, we can do a couple things. We can either talk more about some of the stuff that you want to talk about, or maybe you can, one of the things that I usually am, I mean, you're a physician, so the last thing I'm going to do is teach you something that you already taught me. So that's the one thing that when I go to A4M, you know, they ask me to teach, you know, I first thought to myself, how am I going to teach the physicians who literally taught me pretty much everything I know? But the thing that I'm really good at, the thing I'm gifted at, and one of the reasons my book did really well, especially in doctors' offices, was because I think my gift is the lifestyle tips. It's the recipes. It's things like that. So when people have issues with where they get tripped up, sometimes those are the things that I actually can really help them with. So if you want to ask some of those things, maybe while we're waiting, or, I mean, kind of up to you, but if anybody has questions.
Sure. You know, one of the things that impacted me the most when I saw your talk, and we talked a little bit after, is that I have a son who's a very picky eater. He's on the autistic spectrum, so that makes it very difficult anyway because textures and all sorts of issues come up. And we talked about implementing a more healthy lifestyle. So just getting started can be very intimidating, even for a doctor who knows better. And so when these folks get started and they start trying to implement a plan, what's your #1 recommendation? I mean, I think with me, you said just not be too hard on myself and go slow and don't change everything at once. But what are your best tips for just getting started when you're just overwhelmed?
Okay, so I practice karate, and my instructors, they call them professors, said something that was so helpful to me. Writers write and fighters fight. And what he means by that is do the thing that you do best. And, you know, sometimes as women, we have this tendency to think that, you know, I think everybody does this, but I know women can really beat themselves up a lot and think that we need to do everything really well. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble. And, you know, you are a physician. You are so skilled and you have so much training in doing what you do, and you're out there helping so many people to really live their lives and teach them these skill sets. And I think that if you cut yourself a break, you know, like one of the things I was telling you, now I would handle this in 2 different ways. For people who have children who don't have that same issue, the texture issues, the autism, they have kids who, you know, they're just trying to get to eat healthy, I would handle it very differently. You know, like in my house, my daughter, she might fuss a little bit over some of the changes that I make or eating certain things. And for me, it's like, oh well, you know what I mean? Because I know that that's not the issue with her. She's actually pretty good, but I just don't have unhealthy food in my house. That's just the way it goes. She really doesn't have a choice other than to eat healthy food because that's what I keep in my house. So the rule in my house, she's 10 now. I started this when she was very, very young. So she didn't really know better, but even when she, you know, is at school and she sees unhealthy food and she wants those foods at home, it's like, oh well, and when she fusses or I send food with her to school that she doesn't like, you know, the last time I checked, and parents get all flipped out when I say this, but that's okay. I have thick skin, you can send me hate mail. A lot of moms will say, you know, it's like, well, I can't, you know, they have this idea in their head, they will do absolutely anything, including feed their kids the worst food on the planet, because they have this idea stuck in their head that they have to get their kids to eat 4 times a day. It's amazing to me. So The first thing I did was get that thought out of my head. The last time I checked, it takes kids 30 days to start for them. I know, don't send me hate mail. But the point is, most kids will eat when they get hungry. I'm not talking about kids with certain health issues or certain psychological issues. I'm talking about the average kid. So when my daughter throws a big temper tantrum and she fusses, and I'm like, okay, honey, I'm sorry, it'll be there when you're hungry. You know? And so if she throws a big fit at dinner and she's like, I don't like this, now I don't put a lot of rules around food. It's like in my house, I don't want to create weirdness around food for her, or because I just think it's too easy to create eating disorders and other issues. So in our house, the rule is you can make yourself a healthy meal. I taught her how to make healthy meals really early, but I'm not going to make you a healthy meal, and you don't get to make something unhealthy. I think I'm going to stop trying to share this.
Okay, yeah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened there.
No, it's okay. I don't know what happened. Maybe we can try again in a minute. I'm going to pull you back up. Can you see me?
Not just yet.
Okay, I'm going to... Yeah, you're frozen. Interesting.
Yeah, I moved in my screen, but you're not.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you for a minute then, unless you want me to call back. But, and then what I was telling you, Tammy, is that's sort of the rule in our house. It's like, you know, kids will usually eat what's there, but then I also make it easy for her. As she gets older, I don't want to do her thinking for her. So the rule in my house is my daughter gets to make her own choices when she's out, within reason. She goes to a birthday party because she has to learn how food affects her body. And guess what? Because she's been eating healthy for so long, she doesn't feel well when she eats those foods, and she learns it early on because she doesn't have a lot of unhealthy choices at home. But when I was talking to you about it, and you're trying to get started, and it's hard, one of the things I was telling you, I would identify the problem. So the problem for you is A, time, and B, you've got this child who doesn't like textures, and that's a legitimate problem for you. So, and how do you get started when it's overwhelming? So you identify the problem, that you've got this time issue, you have this child who you legitimately have these issues with. I would, first of all, one of my gifts is the replacements. Replace, don't erase. So you identify his foods, what he really likes to eat, and you come up with those healthy versions of that food. So like in my new book, Healing ADD with Food, I have recipes for chicken fingers, for pizza replacements, for coconut shrimp, fish sticks. You know, so what you do is you identify your kids' foods that they really like to eat. If it's smooth textures, identify those foods. I have like 10 desserts, you know, chocolate mousse, whatever it is. And you make those healthy versions of that food. And, or come up with the recipes. In your case, you're probably not going to make the food yourself. And since, you know, writers write and fighters fight, you need to focus on the thing you do best. You can probably get an intern or somebody who really needs an after-school job to really help you, or come in a couple of days a week and help you do that grocery shopping and prep that food for you. And that's what I would do. I'd identify what the problem is, what those foods are he needs, figure out the healthy recipes, and then get someone to help you. And you can make those recipes really simple. So, and then for some of the moms who can't afford to do some of those things, we've actually helped them come up with plans where they're swapping. They're swapping time. Okay, it's like, you know, this woman can do this, that woman does that, but a couple nights a week they switch out. You know, like, so they can both have time to exercise. Or one likes to shop and one doesn't. One likes to cook. Whatever it is, there's usually a solution if you are determined. There's usually some way to figure that out. But the big thing is making it taste good for your family.
And how do you,
go ahead.
How do you recommend that starting process, getting away from sugar, when you are so addicted, and that weaning process? What's the best process?
Okay, so in my book, The Omni Diet, the first phase is about eliminating sugar, eliminating that addiction to sugar. That's the whole first phase. I always tell people, give me 2 weeks. And what we have really figured out in the way we do it at our clinics is, you know, this idea of everything in moderation. Well, you would never tell a sex addict or an alcoholic or, you know, someone with a drug addiction to go do it in moderation, or take 1 day a week to go eat as much as they want, or to go do as much as they want. You would never do that because it would never work. So what we tell people is jump the canyon. I tell them jump the canyon. You can't cross a canyon in 2 small steps. It will never work. So we take those first 2 weeks. It's really, honestly, legitimately about the first 3 days for most people. There are some people who it takes a few days longer. Now, what we have noticed, there are certain, for us, what we've discovered, brain types. Okay, so if someone is really compulsive or really impulsive, they might have different issues. And they may need a little bit higher protein, or one might need a little bit higher carbohydrate, but not bad carbs. We don't want them using bread and pasta as their carbs. So, and we address those issues, and I address that a little bit in the book. So that's where it really is helpful to understand the science of food. How does food really affect you? But to make it really simple, those first 2 weeks, you eliminate all the bad stuff, you eliminate the sugar, but then we teach you the replacement foods, the things that really help you. You jump the canyon, you get rid of the bad stuff, you add in the good stuff. Within 3 to 5 days, it's going to be easy. And what we do is we want you to not be hungry. So for those first 2 weeks, we can cut back on your food later, but for those first 2 weeks, we do not want you hungry. So 5 small meals. So really it's like 3 meals and 2 snacks, but we don't want you hungry. We want you eating protein and healthy fat. And then we want you replacing the food that you're taking out with those healthy alternatives, those healthy recipes. And what happens is you're not going to be thinking about food because you're full. But those proper combinations of the healthy fat and protein, it triggers those neurotransmitters and the right hormones that send the signal to your brain. When you eat protein and healthy fat and the right foods, it actually triggers those neurotransmitters and the right hormones, the leptin and all those hormones. It settles down the insulin and sends the right signals to your brain that you have eaten and that you are not hungry. But when you eat sugar and carbohydrates that jack up your blood sugar and then trigger insulin, they do the opposite. It sends the signal to your brain that you are hungry, that you have not eaten. So really it's about food science. And we already talked about how sugar is addictive. It's more addictive than cocaine and morphine. It doesn't take very long. And as that inflammation in your body comes down, it actually becomes easier and easier and easier. But no one is immune to those times that you blow it. I mean, not even me. You know, if I go on vacation with my daughter, and even one day of like splurging and like, you know, going a little bit crazy, the next day I'm going to feel off. It's going to take me a couple days to get back on track, and you just have to know that. So, and then, you know, once you really get it under control, you can follow something that I call a 90-10 rule. No one's ever perfect. But you want to wait until you get it under control, and you don't want to ever have your trigger foods. Make sure that you don't engage in eating your trigger foods. So for me, you know, let's be honest, for me it was like a year before I could have birthday cake or icing of any kind, or you'd find me in like the dark corner of some donut shop, like licking frosting off of wax paper. I was just awful. It was terrible. So, do I still have you guys?
Yeah, that's a hard place to be in when you just have those sugar cravings. The cravings speak louder than the logic.
They do, and it's usually about 3 days if you do it right. So lots of water. We do the smoothies in the morning, those 3 meals plus 2 snacks. If you really, you can tell me if you want me to call you back, I will call you back, so you can see me.
Yeah, let's do.
Okay, I'm gonna call you back.
Thanks. Sorry about that. It's so frustrating. I apologize. It works fine on that. Yeah.
She's too. That's where I got that.
No, we got you. That feels much better.
Yeah, they probably know.
So yeah, it's not as hard as it sounds. I always tell people, give me 2 weeks. If you don't like it, go back to feeling like you used to. Lay on the couch, be addicted to sugar, feel miserable, be inflamed. You know, I'm kidding, of course. I'm being facetious. But the point is usually in those 2 weeks, that's less time than most medications take to kick in. And it's in those 2 weeks that people realize how good they really can feel. They haven't felt that good for so long. Now, you guys are already past that phase, you know, for the most part. But then I tell people, you know, then we go into the next phase where they can add some things back in. That first phase is really an elimination diet, which you probably already talked to them about. And then they can add in doing little things, or they can do a 90-10 rule if you go to a wedding, or, you know, certain things like that. But I'm not one of these advocates of go take one day a week and go splurge and pig out and, you know, do whatever you want, because it sets you way back. And, you know, that's where people like go down that slippery slope way back to, it's like, oh, I've already messed up. But at the same time, I want people to get out of their heads this idea of failure. There's no such thing as failing. At least in our programs, the way we do it, there's no failing. Get that out of your head. First of all, perfectionism is an excuse to fail. It just is. Because it's really an excuse to pick up your toys and go home. And women use this idea, I have to be perfect. And, you know, I only knew one person who was perfect and they crucified him, so I don't really want to do that. But, you know, it's like, if you can't be perfect, and when you mess up, like, how many of you have GPS devices? Like, it doesn't call you a stupid idiot, right? It just tells you to make the first legal U-turn. Just make the first legal U-turn. It's okay. If you guys are going to do this for the rest of your lives, which that's the whole goal, this isn't a 12-week plan she's got you on, right? You're not doing this for them to be on it for 12 weeks. This is forever. So if that's your mindset, then and you make a mistake, oh well. You know, people who are the most successful in life, it's because they made more mistakes than anybody else, and they learn from those mistakes. Those mistakes are golden. If you're journaling, you don't want to pay attention to the great days, you want to pay attention to the mistakes. You want to pay attention to the days that you were down, to the days that you felt tired, to the days that you didn't do perfect. That's where all the learning is at. Like, those are golden for you. And that's what we always tell people, like, pay attention to those days, because that's where you can learn the most about you and about what doesn't work.
And what's your thoughts on gluten? Because we focus a lot on food sensitivities, about gluten and dairy and that sort of thing. So as you're cutting carbs, would you say more to focus on gluten if they're gluten sensitive? Of course, you're going to lose some of the carbs with gluten, so to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, we take everybody off of gluten and dairy, especially for the first 2 weeks. Most people stay off of them because they realize how much better they feel. So gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and sugar. So for the first 2 weeks, those are the big ones. And then, you know, honestly, we have them try some of them, adding back in slowly. Most people end up realizing, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So it's like migraines go away, their fibromyalgia goes away, joint pain, like all this stuff, GI issues. And so they're not really willing. A lot of people are like, you know what, it's not worth it to me. And they just end up not going back on them. We usually tell people try it out, so you'll know within a very short time what happens, whether or not you're one of those people. And so for some people who are really severe, we have them repeat phase 1 twice. You know, or even 3 times, if they're just severely inflamed, or they're, you know, diabetic, or they've got all, you know, certain issues. And a lot of them just don't want to go back. It's like me. I just absolutely don't do dairy, soy, corn, or gluten. And I'm just one of those people who's extremely hypersensitive. Not everybody is that hypersensitive to all of them, and you'll know. But there's so many great replacements that I don't feel deprived. Like, I flat out just don't feel deprived. There's so many amazing replacements for them. You know, there's almond milk, there's coconut milk, there's coconut wraps, there's vegan raw, the flatbread wraps. I have recipes for grainless bread that's amazing, and it's high protein. It's like, why would I want to mess with it? There's no reason to.
So what does a day in your life look like when you wake up, and what's breakfast look like for you? What's lunch look like for you?
Smoothies every day. So smoothies are my go-to fast food. There's no question. And usually for me, I'm so busy, I'm on the go. That's why smoothies are my breakfast. Lunch for me is usually leftovers from the night before. I make everything easy. So for me, I always, whenever I'm cooking, whatever we're cooking, I make extras. So, and I usually recommend that people take 1 day a week, take 3 or 4 hours, 1 day a week, and you know, if you're not vegan, vegetarian, then you grill, you know, 6 or 7 chicken breasts. You boil a dozen eggs. You chop up some vegetables, like a big thing of vegetables. Get some hummus ready. Get some salad dressing ready. It doesn't take that long. Once you get a routine down, it doesn't take that long. Buy a whole bunch of to-go containers. Like, I travel a lot, so I have a whole bunch of to-go containers. One of the biggest slip-ups is people thinking that they know how much a half cup is, or a quarter cup is, or a tablespoon is. They think they know and they estimate in their head. And when I would start asking people, they're like, oh, I'm starting to gain weight again, I don't know what's wrong. Are you actually measuring? And they're like, well, no, I know how much it is, it's this much. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's redo that. So buy a whole bunch of containers. One time, you get a Sharpie, one time. You measure out like 4 little tiny containers, measure a tablespoon and 2 tablespoons. Measure it out with a Sharpie, you never have to do it again, it's done. Do it, quarter cup and a half cup, and then it's finished. And you do that on, a bunch of those. And then what I do is when I am making food, I'm making dinner the night before, I pack my lunch for the next day. I just pack it right then, it's ready to go. Because I have to cut as many steps out as I can. I'm taking shortcuts all the time. I do my grocery shopping online. I cut, it's cheaper, by the way.
Really?
You want to save money? You do your grocery shopping on Amazon, join Amazon Prime, join with somebody else, buy things in bulk, shipping is free, you'll save a ton of money. So those are things that I do. When I travel, I take food with me. I keep my dry foods packed in my bag, ready to go. These are things I do. And then I have a restaurant down the street. They know me. So I find places that I know. There are lots of fast food places now, by the way, that have wild fish and vegetables, steamed vegetables. So I know those places in advance. So I can call ahead, have it ready, have it waiting. It doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to take a long time. So if I forget my food, I keep food in my office. So I keep the dry stuff, some nuts, and I have food everywhere. I'm a squirrel. I have food squirreled away everywhere so that I'm not stuck without it. I don't ever go anywhere. My lunch bag is an extension of my arm. So I don't go places without it because I don't want to get stuck. But if I do get stuck, I know where there's a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's or some place that I can go, that I can pick up. My fast food is going to be a salad or a rotisserie chicken, a can of wild salmon, a hard-boiled egg. There's not really an excuse that people can give me, for why you're going to eat something lousy.
It's having a level of mindfulness when you're thinking, I know I'm going to be stressed, I know I'm not going to have time. It's like when I go to work and I leave a Fayetteville office, I know that I'm not going to have time between coming from there and have a meeting. So I have to be strategic. And if I know that I haven't had time, I can plot out, exactly like Chick-fil-A's got a salad that I can eat. Or I know McDonald's, I can ask them for a grilled chicken sandwich and take the bread off. And because if you're not thinking, you're just going to grab the McRib and fries,
Exactly.
But you can eat fast and you can eat easy if you have a strategy.
That's right, and I carry those little cans of wild salmon and BPA-free cans. You can grab a salad anywhere, dump that in it. That's like one of my go-to fast foods also, because I carry them with me. So I know that I can always find like my protein and my carbs, my carbs from veggies, so that I'm not ever stuck. So that's what I do when I travel.
Well, this thing on Amazon, that's interesting to me. I've never ordered food on Amazon before, so what would you order?
I order anything that is not fresh produce. So you can order coconut milk, you can order all of the superfoods. So things like, I like to put, you do not have to put, like people look at my recipes sometimes, they're like, there's too many weird ingredients in superfoods. First of all, you don't have to put those things in there. I do it because it's fun. It's fun and it's a way to boost your phytonutrients. You don't have to. You can use just the basics, the protein powder, some kale, some chard, some frozen fruit, stuff like that. But if you want to boost your phytonutrients, you can add a little bit of superfoods here and there. But they can be a little pricey for someone starting out. But if you shop on Amazon, those are the things you want to shop for. You can get things like Zevia. So if you're replacing that, I do not recommend people go crazy with things like Zevia, which is it's a soda replacement. But if I'm having a play date for my daughter, I can't always be the weird mom who serves kale chips. I just can't, because I'm not going to have any kids in my house. So yes, I shouldn't have them, but I can do root beer floats. I do floats for my daughter. And the root beer floats that I make are with Zevia. So I get root beer flavored Zevia, which is a natural soda with stevia in it. And I do coconut flavored, coconut milk ice cream. It's a coconut milk they use, and it's got erythritol. So they actually make one that is no sugar added. So the other one has agave, which I don't like. So I use the one with erythritol. But just a tiny bit of that, and they love it. They go crazy. So there's so many alternatives to, and I can make my own stuff, avocado gelato. I promise you they have no idea that it's made out of avocados. I mean, it sounds crazy, they don't know. So, these things, these kids actually love it. Frozen bananas. I mean, these are things, they don't know and they love it. And there's the desserts that I make, my daughter can eat for breakfast. So they're great. And those are the things that you do. But the things you can order on Amazon are the superfoods, the Zevia, coconut water, coconut milk. I mean, all the things that are actually the most expensive. And you can buy them in bulk, team up, buy them in bulk. That's what I have people do in our classes. And they save so much money that way.
I think your testimony that you gave in Vegas was so important. You talked about Captain Crunch and the cereals and stuff. I grew up, I think everyone grew up with just junk food, TV dinners, crazy stuff like that. And it's just so interesting because, I don't know if I told you this, but I thought it was normal to hurt as a child.
Oh yeah.
Fibromyalgia essentially. And until, I married my husband and started on supplements and started eating clean, and I realized what it was to not hurt. My joints hurt. Everything about me hurt. I just think it's amazing that people say, I hurt, I have fibromyalgia, I don't feel good. And they're just not looking at the packaged foods, the junk foods, the high sugar content. It's just crazy. And I know you live that.
It was, I mean, we were not kidding poor. So, I mean, it was, I like to say I grew up on the right side or the wrong side of the tracks. I had a mother who was amazing. She loved me very much, but she had to work a lot of hours. I mean, she worked 3 jobs. She was very young. And I unfortunately had an uncle who was a drug addict, who was in and out of our lives, causing a lot of problems. In fact, I remember the day that my uncle was murdered. And the police coming to our door, and my mother and grandmother screaming. There was a lot of chaos in my life, and I'm sure it was the combination of the bad food and the chaos. So there's a lot of drama, a lot of trauma, and those things take a big toll on a little person. So they take a big toll on a big person, but they really take a toll on a little person's developing system. And I was a latchkey kid, so I was alone a lot. So there was not even anyone there to help me process this stuff. And it's really interesting because I grew up pretty tough. I grew up to be pretty tough. When I was little, I wasn't tough. I was just trying to figure it all out. So when I was, lots of stuff happened. And then when I was 15, I was actually attacked walking to high school. I was attacked by this guy walking down the street, drove me down an alley. I was nearly raped. I barely got away from him. And I decided that I was never going to be a victim. Like it really had an impact on me. I remember thinking one day, I'm done with this. Like I'm just finished. And rather than feeling victimized, I thought I'm never going to be a victim. And I learned how to fight. Like not kidding, learned how to fight. I started taking martial arts, I started lifting weights, and I wanted to be sort of in control of my own destiny and the outcome, if you will. And then a few years later, I was knocked flat to the mat. I was attacked again, but this time it was cancer. And I went into this deep depression because I realized I was fighting this invisible phantom, and it was so much harder. It was so much harder to fight for my own health. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to look to, and I didn't know much about nutrition at the time. And so I was up against huge adversaries, what I consider the food industry, giving the wrong messages, mixed messages. And so it was a really tough battle to learn. And then all of a sudden, one day it dawned on me, you know what? I'm a warrior. Like I know how to fight. I can apply those same principles to my health that I have applied to my physical well-being in fighting, outwardly. I can fight inwardly. And that is what I really try to pass on to my clients. Be a warrior. This is war. You need to be serious about your health. The food industry is not there to help you. You have to take it seriously. And people like Dr. Tammy, she's there to help you learn the skills and the tools that you need to be a warrior. But it's really up to you. No one's going to take your health as seriously as you are. So the only difference between a winner and a loser The winner stands up one more time. There's no failing. You just have to get up. You need the right tools. And it's interesting because when I learned how to fight, I wanted to learn how to fight. That's all I cared about. Like, just teach me how to fight. And guess what? That's not the first thing they taught me. The first thing they taught me was awareness, avoidance, deflection, and when to get the heck out. And then you learn how to fight. But I thought, how interesting, because those are the same things that you need to know about your health. Awareness, avoidance, deflection, and when to run. Right? I mean, there are times to fight, for sure. But it's not about a head-on fight. You're not going to go fight Monsanto by yourself. So it's about avoidance.
You know, I caught myself saying one day that I know what to do. If I ever were faced with cancer, I would go on a complete probiotic diet, and I would change everything that I do. And when I caught myself saying that, I thought, that is the most ridiculous statement ever. Why would I wait until I have cancer to start making changes in my life? And genetics-wise, everyone who's ever died in my family has died of cancer. So I'm just waiting. That doesn't make sense. So cleaning up my life, cleaning up my changes, and if I found out I had cancer tomorrow, I would probably be a little more diligent than I am. But when I made that statement and just kind of amazed myself that I could say something so ridiculous, that's when I really started really trying to change things and really trying to eat cleaner and make that focus.
You're so right, and that was the thing that really got me the most motivated. I mean, I was already on my crusade, but when I had a little girl was when it struck me, because genetically she has my genes, and I don't want her to go through what I went through. So I thought, I was raised in this culture of illness, but I am determined to leave a legacy of health, because see, what epigenetics tells us is that it's not just about you. It's about generations of you. So, I mean, how's this for a guilt trip? You are actually determining the outcome for your kids and your grandkids way before you ever get pregnant. So, I mean, like when you're 11 or 12. So you can't go backwards. But, what you do in your life is actually determining the outcome, and that's not just moms, it's dads too. But it's determining the outcome for generations to come. Now, for some of you, okay, maybe you haven't been making great choices, but it's not too late to change. Like, if you change now, that's still going to change that outcome for your kids and your grandkids. And that's exciting. So you can, it's like, okay, I've not been making the best choices, but now's the time for me to really pass that on to my kids and my grandkids. That's a big deal. I think I told you the story of Be Back in the Polo, and it was such a cool story about the gorillas. And that's my favorite story. And the really cool thing is you get to eat so much more when you eat the right food. It's not about deprivation. Great health is never about deprivation.
Well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'd like to open it up for questions because I've been monopolizing you the whole time. So does anybody have anything they'd like to ask her? Yeah, I don't know if you can see.
Sure. I know that changing your diet and what you've talked about is so important, but do you do anything for thyroid health?
So did you hear the question? She said diet's so important, she realizes that. But what specifically can you do for thyroid health?
One of the things that we have discovered, besides having someone who really understands thyroid, one of the keys is someone who really knows a lot about how to treat thyroid. But gluten, getting gluten out, you gotta get gluten out of your diet. It's one of the things that we know is that gluten triggers thyroid issues. And that is a key, is getting gluten out of your diet. But really having someone who understands how to treat thyroid issues. So, that would be the recommendation. I was going to someone who was a thyroid expert, and he wasn't the guy that I should have been going to. So we really do have to have someone who understands it.
Knowing what you know now, do you think, you said you had surgery, right, for your thyroid cancer?
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Oh gosh, I would have gone back, way back when. For me, some of it, unfortunately, was a lack of education starting a long time ago. So, I would have started what I know now way back, meaning that I would have started with the gluten-free diet and the dairy-free diet, I didn't know how sensitive I was to those two things, the gluten and the dairy especially, way back. So for me, it would have been about that, and better testing, better treatment, so better early on testing, and just better altogether overall health. I ate awful. So, I mean, that's what I would have done, is I would have taken, you want to know the honest to God truth? I think that we do not do the right thing in schools. I think we teach the wrong things. I think we teach a lot of kids a lot of things that are not useful. We don't teach them some of the things that are the things that they need for life skills. We don't teach proper nutrition, frankly. We don't teach them the things that they really need to know. And I think this is the type of stuff we need to teach them when they're very young.
And then we allow vending machines with Cokes and chips out there.
It's insanity. It's insanity what we feed kids in school. And then we want them to concentrate. It's crazy. So it's one of my biggest pet peeves. So frankly, I don't know that that's something I had control over. That would have been the thing that I would have done differently, you know, if I had a choice. So it would have been the education early on.
Anyone else? Any questions? Are probably overwhelmed.
I have a question.
Okay.
Does her book cover her whole diet?
So the question was, does your book cover your whole diet, and what resources, and how can they get resources, and how can they access all your information?
So the book definitely covers the whole diet. The first half of it is the science made simple. The second half of it is it's 3 simple phases followed up by a maintenance plan. So it's 3 2-week phases followed up by a maintenance plan. They're fairly simple. They're broken down like do this, and then it's got the recipes at the end. And then the supportive materials, I really recommend anytime you're trying to make a change. I don't know what Dr. Tammy offers you as far as, you know, support and those types of things. I would sign up for everything you can. So I have free materials on my website. I'm sure you've got lots of things that you offer. I have tons of recipes, TanaAmon.com, the newsletter. But you want to get as much of that as you can. People that are in alignment, you want to get those materials. So you can get my materials, you can get my recipes, you can get tips. You want as much of that as you can get. Go on Facebook to people you respect. You want to be submerged in that. Because anytime you are trying to make a change, you need that constant reinforcement. So I would do that. If you're trying to, you know, like my husband has stuff about the brain. I've got stuff about nutrition. You've got stuff about nutrition. So you want to be surrounded by people who are supporting you. There are studies that show that the quality of your life is directly dependent on the people you surround yourself with.
Thank you.
So what does a day in your life look like supplements-wise? What kinds of supplements do you like?
You don't even want to know. That is one place that I am crazy is supplements. I take so many supplements. So I literally probably take about 40 supplements. So
wow.
I mean, I'm big on the basics. I won't even go into all of them that I take, but I do the basics that I recommend for everybody are obviously a multivitamin, magnesium, probiotics, vitamin D, and fish oil. I mean, everybody should be taking those. And then I actually have a quiz in my book to customize it for people. So, because 80% of the population is low in magnesium. It's just they are. But then there's a quiz to help customize it. But you are an expert in that, so you should be helping them, you know, customize their supplements. We obviously are big on supplements that boost brain health. So that's something that we do. And sleep. I don't sleep well because of the thyroid being jacked up all the time. They keep me on high thyroid. So for me, it's melatonin and extra magnesium at night. But then I take, you know, I have to take ferritin. I take lots of things to help balance me out. I take ALA. I mean, I take so many things I wouldn't even know to start telling you. So I'm a big supplement freak.
I love to hear that because it's important.
Lots of things. Yeah. So yeah, I take amino acids. I take so many things.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I really appreciate your time and taking it to share. I'm sorry we had all the technical difficulties, but if you will send me the slides, I will try to present it the best I can and show them next week.
And if you want me to send, I know I sent you the tips. Did you finally get the tips I sent from April?
I did, yes, and I posted them on my Facebook. So those tips are on my Facebook page.
Okay. So. Perfect. I was just saying, because if you want your people to have those, you can do that. But if you put them on Facebook, that's great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Oh, sure. And we'll talk soon. I want to learn some more about what you got and what programs you got going on, so we'll chat soon.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tana.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.